My name is Hope Raymond. I'm the managing editor of carbon markets for the Americas with Quantum Commodity Intelligence. We are a news and price reporting agency focused on carbon markets and other commodities. I'm super excited to welcome up our panelists. We'll have Marcelo Furtado, if you'd like to come to the stage, Bruce Keith, Alexey Shadrin, and Alfredo Nicastro. And a hand for our panelists. Thank you, guys. So I'm so happy to be here in the beautiful Brazilian state of Pará. At COP30, the global community faces a pivotal challenge, turning climate finance and promises into real-world impact. With an ambitious target of mobilizing 1.3 trillion annually by 2035, we need to ask, how can we move from pledges to real climate impact and delivery of these outcomes? Today's panel brings together incredible leaders across this space, and I'm super excited to hear their perspectives, especially on how digital infrastructure can help bridge these gaps. So we have Marcelo Furtado. He is the head of sustainability at ITAUSA. We have Bruce Keith, who is a partner and chief sustainability officer at Regia Capital. Alexey Shadrin, he's the CEO of Evercity, and Alfredo Nicastro, who is the global head of carbon markets at StoneX. So welcome, all of you. So the next generation of sustainable finance really depends on proving these outcomes and not just making pledges. Investors, regulators, and standard bodies all face the same challenge, linking capital to verified impact. Digital public infrastructure, like what Hedera is doing with the Hedera Guardian, is super critical in this kind of push to prove that we can actually make an impact with what we're saying we're going to do. By combining data integrity and financial integrity, new tools such as carbon-linked bonds, tokenized green assets, and digital national registries are redefining accountability in climate finance. So we're going to dive into some of these topics. First, we're going to be chatting a little bit about linking this funding to outcomes. So I'd like to pose the first question to all of the panelists, and feel free to chime in with anything that you think might be critical to this conversation. So how does your guys' organizations approach the challenge of proving that capital flows actually deliver measured climate impacts that we need in this critical time? Maybe we can start with Bruce.
Okay. Thanks very much for the invitation and for assembling this great group. Really appreciate it, because I'm not a tech guy, but I know what I want, but I'm still learning about what I need. And so these forums are the way that we can grow. To your question, we have no provable outcomes and benefits if we can't trace them. If you can't purely track them and you have the reporting from the ground up and from the top down, whether it's the use of proceeds on the way down or the delivery benefits all the way back up. And so if we're going to invest, our firm is focused on sustainable finance and ESG only. We are a traditional firm coming out of two others who did the traditional work, but they weren't comfortable figuring out how to get to all that information and how to deliver and how to link their money to the outcomes. They can link their money to the financial outcomes, they could show their returns, but they didn't have the means or the systems to do everything else that's absolutely required. So they decided to create a joint venture firm that was only that and would build the rails to do it properly. And so we have to find the ways to do the full measurements and report them. So as Wes mentioned, when we did the carbon credit fund, we ran it on blockchain. We took carbon credits, we tokenized them, we kept them on registry, we didn't lose the registry, added in as much other information as we could, and then sold them at 4 times their value, because the buyers could see that information there. Right? So we could track that. So if there's technology that can let you track it down to the ground level, whatever it might be you're looking for, then you can not just prove that, but you can link your money to that benefit. And the benefit doesn't have to be for communities. It can be for financial results, but there's no such thing as sustainable finance and the sustainability of a financial endeavor if the other elements aren't in play and confirmed. And so the information that's available and the digital mechanisms to get to them are absolutely crucial to move forward, especially if we're going to do it at scale.
Yeah, I completely agree. Alfredo, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, maybe Oh, thanks. Well, thanks everyone. Sorry for the embarrassing moment, but it happens with the best in the best family. So, but anyway, I agree with Bruce. And well, StoneX is a commodities trader, financial services company. We serve both commercial and institutional clients. We are typically not a direct investor into climate projects, but we do facilitate investment to clients. So we basically do support investment in projects through third-party capital. So that could be one of our commercial clients that is exposed to carbon and is interested in investing in a project early stage and to eventually guarantee volumes and prices in the future, right? So of course that investment has to be properly grounded, secure, so the clients need to understand what are the tangible outcomes, what is the potential return on my investment, all of those things. Also, we do work with institutional clients, so hedge funds, so family offices that are also interested in investing in climate impact projects, but are more familiar in investing in products that are financially, I'll say, standard products that where you can eventually hedge your risk and you understand exactly how they work. And that is not really easy to provide in carbon. So the lack of a price discovery mechanism and hedging instruments make it harder. So I think as we bring the traditional carbon markets as we know it into the digital space, and we can provide the clients with not only the traceability, but also with financial instruments that can easily change hands like a token eventually that can bring liquidity to a market starving for liquidity, right? So I think the whole digital transformation is critical. I don't see this happening, taking carbon markets where we need it to be without going through the process. So again, also I'm not a tech guy. I don't fully understand the whole infrastructure behind it. So we really like cooperating with folks like Hedera and others that can help us bring those tools and help us bridge the gap.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, no, super excited to have you on the panel and get a little bit more on the demand side and investor kind of perception right now and what's happening. So thank you. Alexey?
Hi everyone. Evercity has been developing digital infrastructure tools and platforms for climate finance since 2021, and even before that we were active participants of the UN Climate Change Conference on the innovation topic. We've been collaborating with the Secretariat and the UN Global Climate Change Innovation Hub on experimenting, doing use cases, R&D, and seeing what are the main pain points that we can solve with digital technologies in climate finance. And we, learned a lot from talking to project developers around the globe, to investors, to communities, and all the other stakeholders that are involved in this space. So we realized that we need to create environments and interfaces and workflows that would help all these folks collaborate together easily, with less transaction costs, with less time needed to perform manual legacy processes, and of course benefiting from transparency and traceability that blockchain and Hedera Guardian can provide. Also, we've been identifying lack of early stage capital for climate projects as one of the main issues that we want to solve, and that prevents the world from actually attaining the Paris Agreement goals, right? Because we need to do more climate mitigation and adaptation projects, and if the projects don't understand how to get initial capital to get started, get verified, certified with all the carbon standards, this is a big problem. And so we've been exploring different approaches to outcome-oriented debt instruments like carbon-linked bonds. We've been exploring this with the UNFCCC Secretariat, with Hedera, and I'm happy to say that pretty soon we're going to roll out some major updates that would actually allow to orchestrate such synthetic, complicated, financially engineered instruments that contain green bond part and carbon forwards part and how they are connected. And if we would have done this before without blockchain, without automation, it would have been very expensive. It would imply many consultants, those who help with every part of this complicated equation, right? But now we can pre-program, we can automate those processes using smart contracts. So depending on the performance of such instruments, on the MRV measurements that can be almost online, we can calculate the interest rate, we can see how the money is moving, how impact data is moving, and such complicated instruments that make a lot of sense because they combine the benefits of both green bonds and carbon credits and forwards, providing additional incentive both to investors and projects. It's now being possible to provide them to the market in an automated, streamlined, easy, and transparent way. So definitely agree with all the speakers and attendees here that digital technologies are really helping us to solve some of the most critical challenges of climate finance markets, and in this particular case provide early stage capital to projects while making investors happy.
Awesome, thank you. So glad that you're here. I know you've had some big announcements recently as well, so it's great to get your perspectives. And Marcelo, I've heard you're a bit famous here in the Brazilian carbon markets, so excited to hear your perspective as well.
Well, I don't know about that, but what I can say is the nice thing about being the last in the round is that I believe the question was super well answered, and I would have nothing to add to what was said. So I'm trying to be a little bit controversial about what we should watch for in the subject that you mentioned. First of all, I just want to congratulate you guys for having none of us being tech smart people and opening your
Including myself.
in opening your event with us, because it shows already an incredible interest in listening to the user side and the market developer side. I think the point I would like to play here is coming from a capital allocation player. ITAUSA is a holding company. We invest in all sectors. We invest in finance, water and sanitation, energy, mobility, construction. So we're pretty much agnostic about which part of the economy you want to invest. For us, the main point is that it is all about the real economy. So for me, the first question is traceability, transparency, and so on, for what? And I think that the end game here is we need to make sure that we are actually flowing the money to the real economy. So the 1.2 trillion that looks like this cloud full of money needs to rain somewhere. And that money needs to fall and be used for the right purposes. And the right purposes will be a mixture of mitigation, adaptation, and you know what? Eventually, loss and damage. So it means that even the insurance industry is interested on how this 1.3 trillion falls into the real economy. And because it was already so well said that the importance of it being traceable, transparent, and verifiable, I would just wanted to touch on two challenging elements for a nature-rich country from Brazil perspective. The first one is on these standards. We are living a situation where standards are designed to be global, but when you look at, for example, the Brazilian economy or the Brazilian nature-based solutions, you'll find that some of those standards do not work for Brazil. You're going to find them that they do not recognize, for example, removals that we could offer from our agricultural base, which is either ignored or denied. So how can I go to a farmer and tell, you know what, you're doing regenerative agriculture, this is great. All this carbon that your rich soil is keeping, that it's actually enhancing your productivity and making your crop more climate resilient, I can't account for, because the international standard doesn't really work for it. Then we want to build the Brazilian standard. And then someone says, no, please don't do that, because we need to do it as an international standard so everyone can agree and trade, especially now that you guys are going to connect to the international carbon market because you're going to have a regulated carbon market here. So we go from voluntary market to an additional regulated market. So that's the first challenge that I want to share with you. The second one is we all love the word technology, but I think that we need to recognize that we are in a sort of a dispute on the dream side, Wes, that you mentioned. I dream of a future where we have technology, but I also dream of a future where we have nature. And right now there is a dispute between a technology track to decarbonize the planet and a nature track to decarbonize the planet. I want both of them to work. But if you say nature is complicated, and I'm just picking up that word because that's my challenge, the financial sector walks away. Bruce will not want to talk to you if you tell him that something is complicated, but it's because it's going to take too much effort to invest on it. It's going to be hard to measure, and I'm not going to be sure if the outcome is an outcome that I can put a financial value to it. However, if you say it's complex, and you guys are smart brains dealing with complexity, and I always use the joke of hyper trading, right? Every place I go and I say, who knows what hyper trading is? Very, very few hands stand up. But this is a very well-known market, fully implemented, lots of money going into it. Nobody really knows how it works, but people know it's complex and someone figured it out, and you trust that it is being well done because it has traceability and so on. So what we need to do now is make sure that the nature market reaches that level. So the reason I accepted the invitation to come here today is because I want you guys that are sitting there to make sure that you're using your skills and all the tools available to make nature a complex, local, but investable. And if we succeed to value nature, then I'm sure that we're going to have a future that we can dream about.
Absolutely. Snaps for that. I see other people doing that as well. Yeah, no, it's super critical that not just to have a global standard, but we do need to be more specific, especially in tropical locations, tropicalized soil models and everything like that. And nature, yes, can be complex, but it's also has so many additional co-benefits, biodiversity, you know, indigenous communities, local communities, and so I really appreciate that perspective. Into our next question, I wanted to ask have a little bit of a reality check and see what are you guys seeing that's working and what is consistently not working in this space in terms of bridging that gap and the use of technology and everything like that. I don't know if anyone wants to kick that off.
Maybe
Do the same.
Well, I am loving to be the last one here, so you guys gave all the...
Yeah, Marcelo, please.
No, maybe, yeah, I'll save you, Marcelo, I'll save you. Yeah, no, maybe I can, I think we all know what might be working well, right? We see some models outside that are working well. We also see some things that we believe could be improved in terms of bringing the standards to the reality of the countries that are implementing the action and generating the assets that we so badly need to get where we need to be, right? So I'll maybe bring a little bit of a perspective of risk management firm, that we do a lot of this kind of exercise and work in other commodities. Even though carbon is not fully commoditized, it's still an intangible asset, a lot of it applies, right? So we discuss a lot about the environmental integrity of carbon credits, additionality, and all of those things. That's awesome, that's very important and critical. You need to be sure to verify the impact of the projects you're investing on and what they are delivering in terms of impact. So of course the digital infrastructure is critical for that, not only for monitoring the projects, but also to understanding the baseline behind it. Brazil has something very particular about it, and Marcelo was touching one that is very close to my heart, which is the farmers, the the producers of our commodities, agricultural commodities in Brazil. I don't know if you guys know, but depending where you are in Brazil, you have let's say 1,000 acres property, 1,000 hectares property. You cannot fully develop that as a producing farm. You need to protect at least 20% of the area. You have to conserve that area. So the Brazilian farmer starts behind a U.S. farmer that can produce 100% of its property. So, and nobody compensates for the benefit that that area is delivering to the environment. So those are things that I believe a local standard could help us eventually consider and compensate, help the farmer monetize for the lack of productivity in that area. Lack of productivity, I mean in terms of commodities. It's producing other assets that they should be able to monetize. So that's one side of the equation. The other one is also very important, which is the counterparty and jurisdictional risk. Depending where you are in the planet, who you're dealing with, there are communities involved or not. If you go to Mexico, you have comuneros, you have different types of people and market players involved. So how you handle the risk? You know, that's very important for an investor when it's coming into a play and evaluating an investment to understand the risks and how to mitigate them. So that's very, very critical. So I think we're failing still in the carbon markets to properly address those risks and translate them into the financial market so we can capture funding. And I believe there's, maybe the carbon markets are not the best instrument for everything. Should jurisdictional projects be funded by this, or it should just be international cooperation? So those are the discussions we need to have. Maybe carbon markets will not fit for every single climate action that we're going to have to take. So we need to take that into consideration. The infrastructure and market infrastructure risk. If we don't have the proper registries and tools in place that you can actually deliver on these instruments, if you don't have a meta registry, or a place that you can be sure that you don't have double counting, those are things that is 25 years down the road of the carbon markets we still have not addressed, right? So those are critical aspects of the market infrastructure that I believe technology will help us bridge the gap. And last but not least, for you to get financial players primarily involved in a market, in any market, you need price discovery mechanisms. It's not only transparency, but it's liquidity. I need to understand what prices are going to, what are the main things affecting risk of the market, and also provide tools that you can use to hedge the risk. Right now you don't have insurance, you don't have a futures, or a very limited way that, of course, in compliance markets like in Europe, you do have that. You have a futures on ice that you can hedge your risks. Very liquid market. We're talking about 20 to 40,000 contracts a day. It's $1 trillion market per year. So what do we need to do to bring the voluntary market, not at the same point, it's going to be hard, but to go into that direction. So we're going to see more financial play. Nothing wrong about speculating as long as it brings liquidity to the market and brings capital to deploy the projects. So I think those are some of the things that I think digital technology could help us get there.
Absolutely, thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I'm going to diverge from my notes because as a Canadian, when I get provoked, my elbows go up in a good way. We're not playing hockey, you're okay. But we need that, right? You need that provocation. I think we're all acolytes for the carbon markets, acolytes for climate, but if we're not responding to where the money is, if we're not responding to the investors or the regulators, it doesn't matter. But this is where I was on a panel 3 years ago in Sao Paulo with several political leaders and a whole bunch of the market leaders on both sides for carbon and finance. And in representing the IFC, I got up and I said, the World Bank and IFC are useless. We're followers. Who needs to lead is Brazil, and for specifically the purposes you guys are saying. So if you look at Brazil, it is the or one of the largest commodity markets in almost every major commodity. It's top 1, 3 to 5, or whatever you want to talk about. You talk about minerals, also there, and we start looking at critical minerals, it's going to be the top market. So why is Brazil listening to the globe when it has the solutions here and the might to do so? Now, you have to play in the global ecosystem. Climate change is a global problem, but the solutions are local. And so what we've been arguing for quite some time, and why I joined this firm, is you can find those solutions here, you can prove them here, and then you can take them elsewhere. So Brazil is a very sophisticated capital market. It's a very robust political market. It's got all the elements. It's got the size. It's got the heft. It's the biggest carbon sink in the world and will only keep growing. Right? Biggest commodity, agricultural programs in the world will only keep growing. They're all going to have to transition. They're all going to have to go down the pathway to resilience, to net zero, to higher productivity and less land, to land regeneration. Only the capital markets can finance that. You want to go to the 1.3 trillion, you don't do that without the capital markets and the big players who are out there. So being provoked works. We can say, how do we answer to you? And I think tech is the answer. I think what we're looking for is, I need to prove the information that I'm showing you. I need to prove that what I'm investing in does have that impact, but also is going to make you money. I need to prove that it's going to keep growing in these markets in this way. We're going to attract that 1.3 trillion. It's not Brazilian money. It's international capital. They have their own frameworks. Again, so while the solutions may be local, we still have to play within the frameworks that's going to attract international capital and then move from there. But if we can do that right, and you get it right here in the biggest market in most of these sectors in the world, or at least in the global south, then you take it elsewhere. That's where the big change happens, although those solutions are local. And then if you get to, okay, well, carbon being a commodity or a security, we don't know. It's not perfect in either, but it reflects both. But you can track its history and how it's moving faster than other commodity markets. Brazil figured out coffee. Why can't it figure out carbon? All right, it figures out sustainable soil already. Why can't it figure out carbon? It's figuring out these other places. It's always led. It's leapfrogging that here. But then when you get to, okay, then how are you going to work it? You need volume. You need capital markets. You need a trading desk. You need your futures, or futures need a past. And they need somebody who's going to start providing that price transparency or setting a price to move forward. I mean, how did OPEC come around? Every government set oil prices whatever they had. Some traders finally said, well, wait. We believe that Brent or West Texas are the best resources there. We understand their chemistry. It becomes a matter of math. Everybody else has to reflect this. We can do the same thing in carbon. So we're working with the Banco Brazil and the World Bank to set up a carbon desk to securitize carbon credits ahead of the game, so that then we can partner with StoneX, either at that level or as a global trading desk, and start moving them. But nobody's going to buy them in volume now, but they are ready to be produced. So what is the global market standard within the regulated approach within Brazil that's going to work? And as then Brazil goes into a break, like it has in everything else, a regulated market for carbon, it's already doing it in symbiosis or in synchronicity with the volunteer market, and isn't going to change that. So how do you work that? Because the volumes aren't going to just be for here, it's for the globe. So you got to bring all that down. But once again, every standard that the global financial markets have applied are already in place here and will be applied based on those frameworks. The only way we're going to get to 1.3 trillion and only way we're going to get to net zero. So that's symbiosis. But again, just back to the topic here, the base is technology. Nobody can manage that kind of information or the speed of it, especially in something new, which is the mitigation effects of the climate finance, the carbon markets, biodiversity, whatever it might be. So loading all that information from multiple sources, proving it, being able to get down to the ground level and say, okay, I know where this carbon's come from. Coffee traders have no idea where most of the coffee comes from because it's been done for 300 years. They don't care. They know the information's there. They can track it. Their analysts can track it. The people who like to do the call and put, they have their game. If they want to hedge it, they have their game. If they want to play the futures, they have their game. If they just want to buy and sell coffee bags from whatever country, they have their game. Carbon is going in that direction. It has to reflect those. But it's already been done. But Brazil is the place what's going to do it. But the technology underpinnings are absolutely crucial. There's no way you do that in volume without AI, without the aggregation of all these systems, without the sort of the what you call it, the logging of the data. But then you got to drill into that data and report on it and use it for these purposes and report in ways. So am I reporting to the authorities? Am I reporting to the financial teams? Am I reporting to the impact people? Am I reporting to Conservation International? Am I reporting to Greenpeace? Whatever it might be, all that's on the same data layers. Somebody just has to aggregate them. So you can't do it without these data systems and without the means to aggregate them, track them, and provide that accountability.
I was just going to add to that a little bit of an understanding of Brazil for you guys. We have a compulsory mandate to do S1, S2. So all listed companies in Brazil are currently doing that homework, which means that you're going to have all the largest companies of Brazil with their climate risk reported, with their nature risk reported, with their transition pathways shared transparently with you so you can follow it. Imagine if all this could be in the same place as Bruce was leading to. So not only you have comparability, but you actually have cheaper transaction costs. So when I'm investing in a company, I can go to one place and get all this data. We have something called Pix in Brazil, and I don't know how many of you know. This is a instantaneous payment platform. The former Brazilian central bank governor was in a panel that Bruce and I attended at the Milken Institute, and he gave a number that even for me was quite shocking. He said that right now we have 400 million transactions per day, which means twice the population of Brazil almost, which means that every Brazilian does at least 2 Pix transactions every day. And the funny thing is that the transaction can now be billion reais or can be cents of reais. This is an amazing output and should engage and enable you guys to think that, okay, Brazil is a really technology-driven country and a technology absorber country. Because it doesn't matter if you create all these things and nobody uses it. The adoption side is super important. Our bank, Itaú, was the first bank to put ATM machines out there for the public. And we're talking about something in the 90s when there were no ATM machines in New York, in Tokyo, or in Paris. So I think it's important to understand the environment. Having said that, I think that the challenge we have here is, for a country like Brazil, I think carbon for us is just the beginning. I want to think about nature credits. I want to think about biodiversity credits. I want to think about water credits. I want to think about payment for ecosystem service tokenized. Much more than just the carbon. And I'm just saying this because I understand that carbon is the entry point for this conversation, but for a nature-rich country is definitely not the end point of this conversation. But if we don't make that transaction, everybody believes that Pix in Brazil is free. If you ask any person, Brazilian in this room, and you say, is Pix free? They're going to say, yes, it is free. But I'll ask, is Pix free? No. Someone is paying, right? Of course. And whoever is paying accepted to pay and feel that the price is adjusted to the volume of money you're operating, to the value of money you're operating. So I also want to put that out to say, although this all has, the infrastructure has a cost, depending on how you present this infrastructure to the market, it will be absorbed, because what Pix is doing for Brazilians is telling Brazilians that you don't even need a bank account. You need a phone number to transact money in this country. And then you would say, okay, wait a minute, you guys, your largest money-making machine in ITAUSA is Banco Itaú. You can't be saying that you like Pix. Banco Itaú is loving Pix. It's not only retaining, but it's actually acquiring new clients with Pix that it didn't have before. So I think that the way to think about carbon markets, the way to think about nature markets, and expanding this notion falls through technology as well, falls through this opportunity that you guys are embracing. But again, that will come with a cost. And I'll finalize this by saying, because I'm always trying to bring a challenge, right, to you guys, I'll finalize by saying there are currently right now over 600 methodologies that one can identify if biodiversity went up or down in a certain place. There are probably almost the same amount of data opportunities with sound, satellite, imaging, LiDAR. The question is, some of those are super expensive, some of those exist in some places and not others. And my friends from the finance sector will say, we need something simple, reliable, and cheap. And we need to work together to get to that point.
Alexey, before you get in, just something just quickly about what Marcelo said. I think I agree with you that we should go beyond carbon, of course. The only thing that I want to be sure is that we don't lose focus. we have a crisis at hand, right? So as long as all the other things that we are tackling do not delay climate action, it can help us get to 2030, 2050, and 2100, where we need to be, I'm all for it. But what I cannot tolerate actually is that we lose a lot of time we think carbon markets are going to solve every single problem in this planet. Communities, biodiversity, it's not going to happen. It's a trigger. That's the one that is starting to promote the change, right? But we're going to need different mechanisms to finance all of these different things. Let's not delay climate action, please. Keep the focus.
Yeah, totally agree. Maybe just sharing on what works, what's not from the tech and infrastructure perspective.
Thank God we have a tech infrastructure person in this panel.
So yeah, we've been following this and contributing for quite a while. So yeah, what we've seen as a foundation layer, I would say, is the emergence of like digital registries, right? So that's something that UNDP, UNCCC were encouraging to implement, and we've seen lots of initiatives there, Climate Action Data Trust, of course, and other national, regional initiatives. So that's a foundational layer. First, if you want to monetize something, you need to understand what it is, right, and keep track of it. So digital registries are widespread, are almost everywhere now. Putting them onto blockchain makes also a lot of sense, although this is not the most widespread technology for those registries yet, while it makes a lot of sense to ensure transparency and traceability. So I'm sure we're going to be seeing more and more registries, national registries on the blockchain. We're seeing that standards are finally embracing blockchain technology and all the other digital technologies, and happy to highlight the collaboration between Vera and Hedera and Wes, and congratulations to all of us on that, because you know, personally I started talking with Vera and Gold Standard in 2017, advocating for blockchain and other technologies, and now they started moving, and that also comes because of the external pressure, because they were not really moving. They were fine. I mean, they had no incentive whatsoever to transfer to the new technological stack, which is more transparent. So now with the Guardian articles that we all know, now with the emergence of tech and the emergence of new carbon standards, so to say, right? We're seeing them popping up here and there, and it was not really possible before because the technology was either very expensive or it was like, you know, the IP was somewhere in the Wall Street or you know, London City or whatever. So now with blockchain, with decentralized technologies, with AI, new applications, new standards and registries can seamlessly pop up. And so I think it's definitely a good idea to keep innovating. And in terms of biodiversity, in terms of water credits, this is now being more possible than ever before. And I'm pretty sure we'll see more and more regional initiatives and standards popping up, while the interoperability is still, of course, the issue. And we somehow need to ensure this interoperability. And that's why I guess we're sitting here, and thanks to Hub Culture and Hedera Foundation for convening this. This is where we need to discuss interoperability of those standards, of course. MRV works. Today we have all the technologies that can measure, like, everything from space, from cameras, from drones with high resolution. We have advanced AI models. But the question here is still the same as 10 years ago, because these technologies were available pretty much. Yes, they're cheaper, but who's paying? So, I'm really encouraged to hear that some of the speakers here and at COP from the demand side are showing, leadership in that. And I assume that they are encouraging that, and they are putting their skin in the game. They want to pay for these technologies, right, to market, to present those assets to their investors. And storytelling here is definitely an important part. And we had an interesting conversation at the Digital Innovation Pavilion yesterday with some of the investors and solution providers and projects. and that they all agreed that storytelling supported by the data is something that makes them stand out and present this to investors in a better way. So technology here helps a lot on marketing those assets, and we have to be clear around that it's a powerful marketing tool. So to say, what we have not been seeing a lot, unfortunately, is the actual use of blockchain, not only for transparency and traceability and registries and MRV data, but for the actual issuance of digital assets. And I know, Darren is here, and we've been, talking and collaborating and doing stuff since 2017 as well. And there is progress, and we're seeing major banks issuing green bonds on the blockchain. We're seeing Europe providing finally a clear guidance, which is called MiCA, on digital assets. We're seeing this in UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. We're starting to see this in the US. So I think great potential is there, still untapped, and we need leaders such as the ones that are in this room to collectively, do projects, show the way, lead the way, and do market making at the end. So, when JP Morgan or BlackRock, or I forgot who that was, they said first, like 5 years ago, that blockchain is a scam, Bitcoin is a scam. And now they're like largest holders of Bitcoin assets and crypto assets, and they're supplying their digitization platform to other banks around the world. So, for example, I think JP Morgan did a digital bond issuance with the first Abu Dhabi bank in the recent months. So here we see the traction, and I think that's one of the highest potentials, because it can definitely, the digital issuance of bonds or other assets can actually combine the water part, the biodiversity part into a blended vehicle.
But I may be kicked out of the room after saying this, but I'm going to say it. I don't think we would have PIX in Brazil if it were not for being an initiative led by the central bank and as a regulatory framework. I don't think the banks came up and said, let's do this, it's going to be really incredible. So I just want to put back the coin that regulated markets and having regulators with smart regulation coming in is very important. We have recently lived in Brazil a situation where organized crime is now very active in the fintech world. And it was amazing to the Brazilian population how deep and how sophisticated organized crime is operating. So it is in the bank's interest, it is in the regulated market interest that you separate the shaft from the wheat. Is that how you say it? Trigo do joio, yeah? So I think it's really important that as you think about developing and enhancing and creating, you also think about the regulatory framework and the public policy that needs to come with it, because we need to just be very cautious that as you want, and I think you're absolutely right, someone has to pay for it. The payment for it comes from the security that this is, at the end of the day, super important for the well-being of the entire system.
But that's the only way it's going to work. Now, the regulator usually follows what the markets are doing and then sets it. Here they let it. It's not going to be different. But international, we're not going to get to $3 trillion if you don't have these structured means. It's just there's not enough faith, there's not enough trust. People are going to play the game, sure. Not at the 1.3 trillion level, not at the hundreds of billions or hundreds of millions level. And Brazil has that in place now in many ways. So you have, I love the CRAs. They're securitized agriculture receipts. A single family farmer can buy into those to finance their farming and have a guaranteed off-taker to their end, and those payments are securitized, regulated by the CVM, on the stock market, not always traded, but fully transparent. It is a bond-like structure that's investment grade and meets every condition of the international players. If the regulator wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened. Now, it took some innovative people to figure that one out. They took a lot of historic tradition from other places, but set it up here and regulated it here. You can do that across the whole agricultural supply chain, the industrial supply chain, and make it sustainable, but the regulators behind it. If it wasn't, they wouldn't be doing the billions per day in movement that happens. So there's who leads and who follows might be a bit of a debate, but that's again why I say in Brazil, you've got the mechanisms and the sophistication to do it right. And you can go to other countries that aren't as regulated, that don't have a full capital markets, right? They don't have a robust political market, but you've already boxed it in. And the international... Wes is cutting me off. All right. No, but I think it's to the point. Money won't flow unless it's there. It'll be speculative on some parts, but it's got to play it. And back to not to, let Wes talk, let me talk for more. If the technology is not underpinning it, it's not going to happen. It's just there's no way. There's not the volume and the security depend on it, but the transparency is going to be required for what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's very clear from the conversation that these technology innovations, carbon-linked bonds, et cetera, blockchain, tokenized assets, are going to be super key in scaling this. And I think both trust is super key in addition to participating from both private and public sector. So I want to thank you guys so much. I think we're running a bit low on time, but...
Can I quick
Please.
Advertisement? We have something in Brazil called the Nature Investment Lab, which now has over 350 organizations figuring out new or adaptation of existing financial systems to finance nature. I think you guys have a great opportunity tapping into it. Some of the outcomes of that group working together is helping the Brazilian government make Equinvest a reality, is making the Petrobras purchase of carbon, Floresta Mais, an investment. So I'm just saying this to flag to you that we have places where you don't have to invent the wheel. You may want to join forces, and with that, make those products reach scale.
Yeah, it's very clear that Brazil is going to lead in this space, and I'm very excited to see how the outcome of COP30 goes. I want to thank all the panelists again, and thank you to the Culture Hub and Hedera Foundation for sponsoring and putting on this amazing event, giving us AC, very nice food, very nice break from the COP venue. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to our panelists. A round of applause for them.
Thank you.